Any radical feminist who wants to come after me, you don't need to, you already did, because socialist Spain waited for a lockdown until after International Women's Day. I am, like most of you out there, in a so-called lockdown, in Q as in quarantine. I was planning to unmask the phonocentric agenda's destruction of men and empowerment of women in my documentary called Avoid. But obviously the project has been halted after the first interview with a female whistleblower. There's a troubling parallel on how governments treat feminism and COVID-19. A strange and mysterious virus it is, and I won't be calling it the China virus. Not only because it's discriminatory, but it will be confusing with all the other Chinese viruses which caused pandemics. Possibly the Black Death, the Asiatic flu, the Spanish flu, the Asian flu, the Hong Kong flu, and the more recent SARS pandemic. But this one seemed to be treated differently from the rest. I was planning to wear a mask, but all the 600,000 of FFP2 masks we received were sent back because they didn't function. They were made in China. We've seen a string of pandemics in the last decades, but this one seemed to be different in many ways. One of the differences being, this pandemic has made our Western governments wait, then one by one decided we had to be locked down and quarantined. It has resulted in panic, bewilderment, denial, as well as euphoria within the climate activist front, and a chance for opportunity for the feminists. Any radical feminist who wants to come after me, you don't need to, you already did, because socialist Spain waited for a lockdown until after International Women's Day. And in spite the clear and present danger of the coronavirus, 120,000 feminists marched the streets of Madrid, holding their usual banners, protesting domestic violence, infected each other not only with their ideologies but also with corona, protesting themselves and the rest of the nation into a lockdown. And once in lockdown, the feminists now claim the lockdown provokes domestic violence, and men are now waiting on new measures against them. Once again, you can be a woman from Zaragoza beating her male partner after an emergency call. When the Guardia Civil went to arrest her, she spat on them, saying, "I have coronavirus." The agents are now in quarantine and she is released on bail, as you could have guessed. So feminists immediately used this lockdown to target the men. Domestic abuse charities warned that this coronavirus lockdown would lead to massive increase of domestic violence. Governments, as we speak, are activating measures to help the thousands of women, and women only, facing weeks of isolation with a violent partner, read men, during quarantine measures. Italy has ruled that in situations of domestic violence, the abuser, which means the man, must leave the family home and not the victim. In Spain, victims of domestic abuse can go to their pharmacy and request a mask 19, a code word that will alert the pharmacists to contact the authorities. In other countries, a note dropped in a grocery bag could be a lifeline for a woman trapped with an abusive partner, which means the man. Gender experts say the rates of domestic and sexual abuse rise when society is under stress, during epidemics, or even when a local football team loses a match. Meaning we, women, are so lucky that there are no local football matches during lockdown. Gender experts say abusers are on a prowl 24 hours a day, meaning men won't even take a short break for a lunch or an intermeal snack. Therefore, the Spanish government launched a chat service with geolocation technology, enabling women to call the police. In Britain, Save Lives said bank staff as well as health workers should watch out for coded messages the abuse victims may give out when contacting them. Lloyds Bank has sought the charity's advice on how to spot vulnerable customers. The public now is urged to reach out if worried about a neighbor. Some groups take it even further voicing that domestic violence perpetrators should be evicted from their family home during coronavirus. Even the virus itself seemed to be in on it, since it seems to attack men harder than women. Leader of the British Women's Equality Party and candidate for London Mayor, Mandy Reid, is calling on government to enable police powers to evict perpetrators from homes for the duration of lockdown, via domestic violence protection orders, including waiving court fees. Those feminists. Mind you, first they marched the streets in Madrid, creating the pandemic, and now this is popping up everywhere in the world. In a totally crippled world, there's no need to worry about 10 trillion genders and their correct pronouns. There's no need to advocate and promote drag queens getting friendly with our children, and no need to hunt down men with insane laws. No need to kill all men, as we will need them to rebuild our society, in case of a total collapse. You know it's war when countries start legislating laws to enter your house without a warrant. The army has been deployed, and the government could decide to listen to the feminists, like they always do, and start pulling men out of their homes. But this goes far beyond feminism and its war on men. This time it seemed to be a war on men and women, at least a war on a percentage of them. And I knew it was war when a week ago reports of a Plan B appeared on the internet, which consisted of relocating the elderly out of their towns, paralyzing all traffic, and more eerie measures, which were later taken offline. I now indeed read about elderly patients transferred to other villages, and how the villagers protested against the ambulances bringing the infected patients into their town, throwing rocks at the ambulances and police out of fear their town will be the next to be totally infected. And you know it's a war against the people. Now the governments are allowed to keep track of you by ordering all phone companies to hand over all their information and turn it into their intel. This is when those wild conspiracies have become policy overnight. The Netherlands is one of the few remaining countries which uses the herd immunity technique. This is usually done with a vaccine, but my country takes the risk to expose its entire population with the virus, hoping to build up immunity. And if everybody dies, we're wrong. They publish the number of infected people every day, but they refuse to give the numbers of tests they do, meaning we don't have a clue what the actual number of infections are. When asked about it, they replied, "That's fun for later." Really. The article was taken down within a few hours, just like the article about relocating the elderly. The illusion we differ from regimes like the People's Republic of China when it comes to censorship or free speech, or even communism, has been long gone since I started making my videos. And this video is not about the virus, it's about how the powers that be are coordinating it.